Happy holidays. And it's good to be back. Good to see you. I put on this hat just for you, and I hope that you like it. And today we're going to talk about something which probably all of us are struggling with, especially heading into the new year, when we're losing our minds, planning our futures, when we feel like, oh my God, it's a new year. I'm 1 year older. So I'm turning 24 next year. So I turned 24 in January, which is kind of scary. So that's one more year before the mid 20s. But I simply today want to share something that I've discovered recently that really, really helped me out, especially for reading some of the stuff that I want to read in 2025. Because one thing that we are damn sure of is that we don't have unlimited time. And one thing that has consistently robbed me of my precious free time was scrolling on Instagram. So, I create a lot of content on Instagram, on YouTube, and across all these different platforms, and sometimes on Substack. And there's kind of like this unspoken rule of like, if you create content up there, you better stay engaged with what everyone else is doing. So I follow a lot of creators that I like. I follow a lot of people in my niche, and I love to browse their stories. And it's kind of like, yo, let's have a coffee when I'm in this city here, when I'm in that city there. Also, I'll be in London in February. More precisely, I'll take a train from London to Oxford. I'll talk about this a little bit later in another video, perhaps. But there's a lot of networking that's involved in creating content on social media. So sometimes I have to reply to a DM here. Sometimes I have to like post a reel there. But what eventually started to happen was that once I have posted a reel, once that I have like messaged someone that I needed a message, there's this urge to hop on a For You page and to start scrolling. And it happens quite unconsciously. There's this urge, just like, I wonder what's going on around the world. And then I would be sitting on my couch in my comfy chair, and I would scroll for the next 3 to 4 hours. And those experiences are usually really terrifying, at least for me, which is that when you start, you're kind of looking for one thing, but you always end up somewhere where you don't want to end up. And this is kind of like how the algorithm is designed. And I feel like recently there's been like, the kind of content that's being recommended to me, they're undergoing some degeneration. And when I say degeneration, I mean they're just gradually turning into the weirdest dog memes or pet memes, even though I don't even have a pet. Maybe they've detected that there's this aspiration for me to have a dog. Now, all I have on my feed are weird dog memes or dog videos. So that's been quite interesting to observe. And on the other hand, you have to wonder, where did all that time go? How is it a case that, common sense, if we think with common sense, we should just hop on one of these platforms, do what we need to do, and be done with it, right? But most of the time, that's not how it works because these algorithms are literally designed to keep you trapped on the app. And for us to understand how it works, it's kind of like it's not really healthy for these companies for us to discover how it really works. And I'm even willing to make a scarier point, which is beyond just capturing our attention. I think these apps have tapped into something um, that only philosophy has an explanation for. So, a long time ago, which is about 6 months ago, I completed writing a thesis. And when I was writing this thesis, I read a lot of books by Byung-Chul Han. And one of the books really captured my attention, which is called The Scent of Time. So Han was basically arguing that in the 21st century, or in our neoliberal condition, whatever that means, the crisis that we have is a temporal crisis or a temporal crisis. So we have a crisis in relation to time. So his point is that how we experience time has fundamentally changed since the advent of technology, since the advent of social media, and since the advent of all these algorithms that are determining what we watch and what we can watch, and how much time we'll spend on each and every one of these platforms. So, have you ever experienced maybe like I'm edging to my mid 20s. I turned 24 in January, and that's one more year before 25. So it's kind of scary. But especially recently, I started to notice that time is starting to accelerate. A week feels like a second now. Sometimes it's just like I have so much to do during a week, and sometimes I would just like do everything, and then figured that it's already Saturday night. I thought yesterday was Monday, and now how is it Saturday night? So as you age, you're going to start to experience that time is getting, bunched up. Time is really getting compressed. And one of the explanations for this is as we get older, time becomes less and less structured, especially when you're around a 26, 27, sort of like mid 20s to late 20s period. There's a lot of uncertainty involved. And we have just departed from the strictures of being a child and a teenager where you had to go to school, where you had to like go to university or something. But especially when you're in your mid 20s to late 20s, there's a lot of uncertainty. You're kind of letting those old structures go, and at the same time you don't really have new structures in your life, like I don't know, going to a class every Friday, or like having lunch with one of your friends every Wednesday. You don't really have those new structures in place yet. So you're in this kind of limbo period where anything goes, right? There's very little structure to your time. And as we have less structure to our time, we can no longer experience duration. So duration and time, they're quite similar in concept, but duration is when you've set up a frame of time for you to properly and deliberately experience that time. So duration looks something like watching a 3 hour long movie. Duration looks something like reading 2 hours of a really nice novel. Duration looks like sitting down deliberately to chat with a friend for 3 hours over lunch. So those periods are durations, and they require some sort of mandatory structure for us to experience that duration. That's why, at least for me, I always feel really good coming out of the movies. I always feel really good after reading for 2 hours. But if we let go of these strictures or these structures in time or timekeeping devices, our days simply become one moment to the next. Um, our days simply become just one happening and then immediately switching into another event. And the next thing we know, we don't really know where we are, because as events succeed one another in quick successions, we start to lose the ability to experience that time. So as a result, time seems to accelerate. So here's a really great quote from Ascent of Time, the book that I mentioned. Quote, sensations follow each other in quicker succession in order to keep the empty intervals from lasting long, unquote. So the intervals that we speak of are durations. And I want to ask you to answer this question. I want you to answer this question. How many empty intervals do you have in your life? Are you the kind of person to occupy your attention straight away when you have a little interval, when you're waiting in line for coffee? Or are you one of these people who's going to stuff that up with another happening, um, with pulling out your phone, trying to jam that empty interval with some stimulation or sensation? So the argument here is the heavier or the denser you pack your time and schedule with events, with sensations and stimulation, the faster time will pass by you. And this is why sometimes when we scroll, because scrolling is a very interesting phenomenon, it is content and it has a micro story in it. You know, for like a 30-second reel or something, or one of the reels that I post on Instagram, they are so quick. You know, one of the reels that you see from my Instagram feed compared to this longer video, you're probably not gonna get as much from that one reel compared to this long video. So that's why I'm really focusing on longer format here. So there's no duration in a 30-second reel because there's no complete beginning, tension, conflict resolution, and end. There's no story arc, and it doesn't really hold your attention. So instead, what you're getting is a rapid succession of one sensation to the next, one event to the next. And based on what we've said before, the more you jam your attention with these quick successions, the faster time will pass by. And the next thing you know, you don't really know how many reels you've consumed, and you can't really remember anything from these reels. And I think that's the most terrifying thing. It's not like I'm learning a bunch about the world, but I feel like I could internalize almost nothing from these reels. And that's quite scary. And that's quite sad because had I invested maybe 30, 40% of that time to reading a book or listening to a podcast or, I don't know, chatting with a friend, it would have been a lot more fulfilling use of my time. Notice that I didn't even use the word productive, and I think productivity is overrated. I think fulfilling is the best way to describe it. We want to aim for fulfilling ways to spend our time instead of feeling empty and distressed after scrolling for a few hours. So that leads us to the second point, which is what is this gross feeling that we get from scrolling? What is this gross feeling that we're all so familiar with after a few hours of scrolling? We think to ourselves, why did I do that? How could I be so stupid? I've learned absolutely nothing, and now I feel worse about myself. That gross feeling, I think I'm willing to put forth a thesis, which comes from a place of not extending your mind enough. So, as we know, scrolling is actually quite easy to do. You just have to sit there, pull out your phone. You can sit there for a few hours just to scroll. And I think I've addressed this point in my attention video, which is how to develop your attention video. And in that video, I basically mentioned a point that the human mind actually gains pleasure not from stimulation alone, but from extending itself, right? So, a quote by the Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I don't even know if I pronounced that name correctly, but in the 1980s, he did a bunch of experiments on subjects, and he basically concluded that quote: "The best moments of life, quote, usually occur when a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult or worthwhile," unquote. So. A lot of the times we confuse stimulation with satisfaction is because, if one thing is really good, we might as well just eat more of it, right? Instead of spending time to make healthy food feel good in your body 24/7, I should just go to the fridge and pull out a huge can of condensed milk and rub them all over my brioche and eat all of that, right? That's supposed to make me feel good, right? Not speaking from experience, but it doesn't. The more you eat, it's kind of like sipping the first sip of a really sugary drink. The first sip is always revolutionary. It's fantastic. You want to have more of it. But when you get up to the 10th sip, or when you get to the third piece of that brioche with condensed milk spread all over it, it starts to taste a little funny and you start to feel a little bit like sick of it. And that is what scrolling is. Scrolling is rubbing condensed milk on a piece of toast. Scrolling is drinking a really sugary drink. And scrolling is that kind of low effort but high stimulation kind of thing. Whereas something that really requires extended effort, something that requires a bit of time, a bit of effort to get right, those things are more difficult, but typically we tend to feel a lot better after we do those things. For me, that's going to the gym. I've been a gym rat ever since I was 14, but I stopped during university because I was too busy. Now that I'm kind of like taking a break from university, oh my god, like the workouts were so pleasurable. It's not because it's not from like extending your muscles. Sometimes a workout could be quite horrible, could be quite challenging, and I'm always sweating. I'm always wiping away the sweat from my face, and my muscles they ache. And this morning I woke up with with just the most terrible ache from my belly area, um, and it's horrible most of the time. But then after I've completed a workout, I just remember having this huge feeling of accomplishment and a huge wave of just satisfaction. And that's an example of me voluntarily pushing myself to achieve something that is difficult. And the reward of that is very satisfying to the mind. Let's apply this to focus. And I personally think, if we apply the gym analogy to focus, focus actually feels really good to the mind. Then again, watch my How to Develop Your Attention video if you want to deeper dive into that. Focus actually feels really good to the mind, and you've experienced this after you've seen a really long film. After you've seen, I remember going to a viewing of Paris, Texas. It was like 3.5 hours long. It was one of the longest movies I've ever seen. But I walked out of the theater feeling really good. It was kind of like I went into this trance state, and all of a sudden I'm back, thrown back into reality. And that was just a magical experience. And I couldn't quite articulate what it was, but I really think what it was is that I pushed my brain to extend itself, to sit through and to sort of like absorb myself in such a long piece of art that by the time I'm done with consuming that piece of art, it rewards the brain with this deeper satisfaction. Same with reading, same with listening to a long podcast, same with probably sitting through this video. If you're still here, congratulations. Attention is deeply satisfying to the mind, and we are left with that gross feeling precisely because we're not accessing this deeper level of attention. So now we are going to getting to the solution that I proposed at the very start of this video. After we've understood why we feel so bad after we scroll for so long, and after we've explored why is it a case that time seems to just fly by, time seems to just slip through the cracks of our fingers when we're scrolling. Now I am very excited to show you guys this app. It's called Screen Zen, and then again, it's a free app. I'm gonna put up a link on the screen right here. I'm just gonna shout out this company. It's a free app. You can make some donation to it. So if you have the means to do so, please donate to this app. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I just really like this app. So I installed this app about a week ago. And fortunate transparency between work on social media and between like posting on Instagram and messaging sponsors and collaborators, people I want to collaborate with on Instagram, I spend on average about 4 to 5 hours on my phone. Right, checking emails or like consuming reels and stuff, all combined 5 to 6 hours. It was quite ridiculous because about 3 to 4 of those hours were on Instagram scrolling. But after downloading this Screen Zen app, so the minute you open up this app, it automatically blocks an app. So if I just right here go on Instagram, a screen pops up, reminds me to ask myself the question, why am I scrolling? And it has this unlock button under there. And basically, this app allows you to unlock the app for a specific set of time. And you can only unlock this app for a certain number of days or some certain number of times every day. And over time, I think it's just because checking your Instagram feed or checking your TikTok feed, it's so simple. You can just click a button and it's right there. But I think by installing these little subtle devices of resistance in your way, by assigning yourself a specific window of time or by delaying that sort of access by giving yourself 5 seconds before you log in, I think for most people that's really enough for you to pause and think about why you're scrolling and potentially decide against it or still heading to the app for a limited amount of time. So my time blocks are currently set at 15 minutes. And I think over the past week, I've reduced my screen time from 6 hours to, I'm not even joking, one. Yesterday, my tracker gave me spat out a number that was like an hour and 58 minutes. So that was quite interesting. So I spent in total about 30 minutes on Instagram, and then virtually the rest of that was just on Gmail, replying to emails. So that was quite good. So I think I reduced my screen time by such a huge margin in such a short period of time. And I think it's really worth it for me to keep using this app. And immediately I made a donation to the app because it's just so fantastic. And I would want you guys to experience the same. So that is all I want to talk about today, which is a bit of a roundabout way of saying you should use this app and you should really think about the things that we've talked about, because these are the things that I'm also struggling with. And in 2025, we're gonna have a ton of new projects coming up, and we're gonna have a lot of interesting content that I'm going to feed you in relation to this entire project of bringing lifelong learning into your busy life. Because I think one of the main things that we're all struggling with here is that we want to learn more about the world. We want to read more books and we want to consume a longer film, but we simply don't have the mental faculties or the skills or what we can do to kind of cut out these distractions in our lives. And I want to dive headfirst into this problem, and I want to propose certain solutions, and I want to just, have fun in the process. How do we integrate lifelong learning as a really fulfilling hobby for us in our lives? And that starts with cutting down your screen time. So anyway, happy holidays. I hope you're having a wonderful time with your family, with your friends, and I hope that you've received all the lovely presents that you've asked for. And Robin Walden here. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care and goodbye.